Are we live?
I think we're getting there. There we go.
Okay.
I think we are live.
All right. Hello.
Okay. Yeah, this is strange because we're backwards. We're like a mirror. Are we a mirror image? No, we're
We're
backwards.
we're flipped.
Yeah.
So we're confused. We're sitting opposite what you're seeing.
Very strange. Anyway, oh, let's see. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. So, welcome. Um, I'm Christy Joy. I'm a healing touch practitioner and instructor, and this is Bonnie Thompson. She is a healing touch practitioner and body code, emotion code, and we are both Polyvagal Theory geeks. And today we are going to be talking about understanding ourselves. This is the title, right? Understanding ourselves, anxious versus overwhelmed. So, the reason we want to understand this is it really helps us to recognize why we're reacting and behaving the way that we are when we're under stress, feel threatened. And if we can understand why we feel and behave the way we do, then we can have more self compassion, for one thing, which is really important, and also have choices. So, I know for myself, once I started to understand how the nervous system works and the different survival states, which we're going to be explaining in a minute here, um, I really could, as I was met with stress and challenges, I could say, okay, that's this. This is the fight flight energy talking. That's what's happening right now. So instead of maybe making poor decisions in that moment, I could do things to help regulate my nervous system and, make better decisions and think more clearly. So, Bonnie.
Want me to jump
Yes,
in?
Bonnie's
Okay.
Bonnie's gonna tell us about polyvagal theory in a
In a
nutshell.
nutshell, which
Yeah,
is quite the challenge.
yeah.
So, polyvagal theory, it's a theory around the function of the vagus nerve. And won't go into a lot of detail because we only have a half hour here. But so the vagus nerve innervates almost every organ in your body. And it sends information to the brain sends information back to the body and the organs through the vagus nerve. It is extremely important. And so polyvagal theory is the life work or career work of Dr. Stephen Porges. And what he discovered is that there are basically three neural or nervous system circuits in the body for managing perceived threat and for supporting us in keeping us alive, keeping us safe. And the vagus nerve is a huge important part of that. So polyvagal refers to more than one. So there's the vagal circuits that go um, to more of the upper body and facial area. And then there's the vagal circuits that go down below the diaphragm to the gut and all the organs that are below the diaphragm. It's a lot more complicated than this. This is the simplified version. So there's three primary neural circuits or states, survival states.
Mm-hmm.
And the one that we're most familiar with or that we talk about most probably that you're familiar with is the fight flight response. So that energy that gets you fighting or running away from a threat. So that's one neural circuit. The other two are the social engagement system. So that's that upper ventral ventral vagus. I wasn't going to use that term, but now I said it. So ventral vagus is that social engagement part of the vagus and the system around that. And ventral just refers to how that part of the vagus nerve comes out of the brainstem. So don't get hung up on that word. Ventral. It's the social engagement system. It's the system that connects in with our area around our eyes and our ears, our hearing, our response, and connection with other people.
Right, that's what I was just going to say. That's the state where we feel safe and connected and at, kind of at peace
Mm-hmm.
and feel like we can be relaxed. So that's the safe and social.
Mm-hmm. Safe and social.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Another term that we hear a lot when we talk about the parasympathetic, which the vagus is managing almost all of the parasympathetic system, is rest and digest.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically referring to that state where we feel safe
Mm-hmm.
and comfortable, and safety for us as humans generally means that we are connected with other people,
Mm-hmm.
because that's how we as humans survive, is through connection
Yeah.
with other people. So that social neural circuit, there's their fight flight neural circuit, and then the last one is the shutdown response, which we often call the dorsal. Since we talked about ventral, which means towards the front of the body, the dorsal vagus comes out more towards the back of the body. That's why it's called dorsal. So that's the shutdown response. That's the freeze response. So animals are always a really good example of this, because they sometimes are extremely clear on this. So you think about the opossum, and we talk about how it plays dead. Opossums don't play. They're not consciously making a decision to do that. Their their nervous system takes over and it does that for them. So it's a very low metabolism, immobilized state. And that can be a huge important way for us to survive. And we as humans, opossums have that circuit, we have that circuit. So in a really extreme version for humans, people may pass out, they may be unconscious. So those are the three neural circuits: the social system, the fight flight, and that shutdown response.
So how this might play out in like everyday life is, maybe we feel pretty relaxed, we're doing our thing, and then we are met with a challenge. Maybe we get a distressing email from our boss or the bank or something, and so we start to feel very anxious and feel like, okay, I need to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you're feeling a little frantic or panicked and you can't really think very clearly, and then maybe you make an attempt to remedy the situation, and you're met with another challenge or another obstacle, and then you just say, oh, I can't, I feel completely overwhelmed, and you just want to, give up and crawl under the covers and be done for the day. So that's kind of how it can look. So anxious is often associated with that fight flight. And one of the key ways to recognize it in yourself and others is an urge to mobilize.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to do something. We want to take action.
Punch someone.
Yeah, sometimes we want to punch someone.
That's the fight. That's that fight energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then overwhelmed is more associated with that shutdown phase, where we just feel like it is all too much and we can't, and that is associated more with an immobilization.
Right.
It's like you can't make yourself take action.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be associated with procrastination, which we actually did another Facebook Live about that. Yeah. And the same kind of thing applies, that if we can understand those behaviors in ourselves, that, okay, we're not lazy, we are experiencing some level of overwhelm and shutdown, and that is, underneath this thing that we call procrastination, that we take as a very, negative thing on ourselves. So,
Yeah, and that brings up the point of that these states are not good or bad.
yeah.
They're not. They're helpful, and they're going to be life saving in some situations.
Right.
And again, this is an oversimplification of all of these things. It's very complicated how these things work. So we use that sympathetic fight flight energy all the time. Anytime you are cleaning the house, you are accessing sympathetic fight flight energy, that sympathetic energy, because you're mobilized and you're doing something and you're active.
And we were talking before we started that we're experiencing some sympathetic energy before doing this presentation, right? Like, so when you're about to speak or do some sort of performance, you are experiencing, if you feel like that anxious excitement, that's the sympathetic energy, and that's useful because if you didn't have that, maybe you wouldn't really care that much, and you wouldn't be able to be, on and
And focused.
So it's useful. But if it was keeping us up all last night, if we were so anxious and stressed about it that we couldn't sleep, then that's not useful. That's when it's a problem. So all of these states work together and have their place to help us function every day, all throughout the day. So we talk about default state, understanding your default state. So that's what we're addressing here, is what typically happens for me when I am stressed or feel threatened. Do I typically go into fight flight, or do I typically go into overwhelm? Now, most people are going to do both to some degree. I mean, it's never just all one
we all
or all the other.
experience all of that.
But generally, there's one that is kind of your go-to, and that's what you typically do when you feel stressed. So,
right. And so what we're hoping to do here is to kind of give you some clues, some ideas around identifying what's your default state. What do you tend toward when you're stressed, when something challenging happens, and really coming back to that mobilize versus immobilize is one of the best clues, because that sympathetic energy is a mobilizing energy. So if when you're stressed, you clean the house, or you or you go punch a punching bag, or you get angry, those are all clues that you're tending toward that sympathetic response, that fight flight response.
You can't sleep, your mind keeps spinning mind is very sympathetic energy, fight flight energy.
And anything that fits in with feeling anxious. So it could be physiologically too. So if you tend toward high blood pressure, or you have a fast heart rate, or you find yourself breathing shallow and quickly, or you tense muscles, those are all sympathetic. Those are all the kind of physiological responses that your body has to that sympathetic energy. So those would all be good clues that if that's how you tend to respond to things, that's kind of your default state. That's what you fall back to when something feels threatening on some level.
So this might be a good place to, just kind of share a very simple tool to use if that is the case for you. And I also just want to invite questions or comments as people are watching this. So when you find yourself, stressed and challenged, and you can recognize, okay, I'm feeling really anxious, and, I'm feeling that like tense fight flight energy, and it's not useful. It's too much, more than you need. You can use your breath. So typically when somebody is anxious and stressed, we tell them to take a deep breath, and that's not quite right. Because if somebody's already anxious and we say take a deep breath, typically what they'll do is, and actually that fast in-breath like that is more activating. So what we want to do is take a normal breath in and take a long, slow exhale, because that tells your body that it's safe, that there is no threat. So it will calm your nervous system down. So we call it the 4-8 breath because that helps you remember that the exhale needs to be longer than the inhale. So it would look something like this. So just a normal breath in. And that long, slow exhale. So sometimes, exhaling through pursed lips feels really nice and calming.
It'd be nice to vocalize that exhale too, because that stimulates the vagus.
So like this.
So,
we do that a lot in my household.
Yeah.
And my daughters, we all do that. We're like,
It's good though, because it stimulates that social engagement vagus, which is what you want. You want to bring more tone to that part that brings you back to that connection, safe place.
So this is one that's so simple. It's great for kids. My daughter uses this one, and it's very simple, very quick. And it's very, very effective. It actually calms your nervous system down. It physiologically does it.
Well, and I just want to say this. So when you exhale, that motion of that process literally stimulates the parasympathetic.
Yes.
Inhaling stimulates the sympathetic. So really all we're doing with this is we're spending more time stimulating the parasympathetic, that relaxed, calming energy, and less time with the stimulating inhale.
Yeah.
So it's really just, we want to spend more time on that exhale, less time on the inhale.
Yeah.
And the 4/8's just a nice, easy number to remember.
Yes.
It's just not a magical thing. If you can't remember that, which it's hard sometimes when you're in these states to think clearly.
Yeah.
It's like, there's this special fancy breathing thing I'm supposed to do, and it's really hard to access that when we're in these states, because sympathetic and especially shutdown, we lose access to the prefrontal cortex. Our thinking brain goes offline. And so as making it super, super simple is really important. So just if the only thing you can remember is doing slow exhales, that's great.
Yeah. And that'll do it. So then if your typical response to feeling stressed or threatened is the shutdown, that feels like overwhelm, that feels like immobilizing, and it can feel almost impossible to take action. I mean, that's been my experience of it. It's like, I know I have to do this thing, or I know I would feel better if I did this thing, but I literally feel like I can't do it. So again, it's not good or bad, but if it is interfering with what you want and need to do in your life, then there are ways to work with it. And of course, like Bonnie said earlier, this is a huge, complex topic, and there are so many factors that go into our different states and our default states, and many of us live most of the time in one of those states, and then it just gets exacerbated when we are stressed and challenged, and it really depends on our history, on our capacity. We use in our classes that we teach, which I didn't mention, but we teach a class for kids, sensitive kids. We teach energetic self-care for teens and adults. We teach healing through the vagus nerve, which is all about Polyvagal Theory for energy medicine practitioners. But we use an analogy of a jar. So we each have a certain size jar that we're born with, and then that can kind of change given our experiences and traumas and things that we experience through our life, but that's kind of representing our capacity. And then if you imagine like balls in the jar, each ball is a challenge. And it doesn't necessarily have to be something bad. It can be something good and that you want to do, but it, takes some of your capacity and energy. And so where you are in your level of capacity is going to affect how you react in that moment to whatever that stress or perceived threat, and even your perception of it as a threat or not, is going to be influenced by kind of where you are at with your capacity. If you have very little room in your jar, or if you have a lot of room in your jar, right? So, I mean, I'm sure everybody's experienced this where, something that maybe does, you can kind of, you can kind of see, part of your mind can see, like, this isn't that big of a deal. I feel like I'm overreacting, but I can't help it. I feel so anxious, and I know that it's okay, but I don't feel like it's okay. And so that's what's going on there.
Your jar is overflowing.
Your jar is overflowing. Yeah.
Too many balls in the jar.
Yep, exactly. And so that's where, kind of having that awareness and having some tools and some self-compassion, it can help you, kind of navigate that.
Yeah. And I just speaking of self-compassion, for me, when I started learning about all of this and understanding what was going on, this was the biggest thing that this did for me was to create more self-compassion. Because I'm a shutdown person. That's where I go, and that breeds procrastination. That is a very common thing, and kind of this inability to get things going, and beat myself up all over the place for that, and for all the things that that I would tend to do, because this is not just about how you feel. This is about behaviors. This will drive behaviors, and so having some understanding about why I am the way I am, why I do things the way I do, has been so huge, because it's like, oh, I'm not just a bad person. It's, I'm in shutdown right now, and that's interesting. Why am I in shutdown right now? So being able to identify what's going on gives me choice.
Yes.
It's like, oh, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Why am I feeling overwhelmed? Well, there's this, and that, and I have this space now where I can say, oh, this person has got too much going on some level.
Yeah.
And how can I take out some of those balls from the jar?
Yeah.
And that the being able to do that has been life-changing for me, and that's, I think, for you too.
Yes.
And that's why we're so excited about this.
Yes.
And why we're doing what we're doing, because I think it could change the world.
Yeah. And when you just said it drives behaviors, that's why it doesn't ever really work to address it from the behavior angle. So if going back to procrastination or feeling overwhelmed, if you just try to force your way through and change
make
your
a new
behavior
listing system,
exactly, that doesn't work, because your physiology is driving the behavior. So that's where you have to go to, is how do I support my physiology to feel safe and to have more capacity, and then the behavior is going to automatically change. I mean, and that's across the board with whatever behavior is happening. So
and I just wanted to make sure we talk about this. So we talked about how you can get out of that sympathetic if you're feeling stuck there. How do you get out of that shutdown? And you had a really good example. That I think is a good illustration of a way to approach that.
Yeah, so it was a friend that tends towards overwhelmed shutdown. And I asked her if she wanted to go for a walk. And she didn't. And she knew that she didn't, but she knew that it would make her feel better if she did. because we've done it before and it always makes her feel better. So it's that mobilizing, right? But she couldn't think of going for the walk. That was like too much.
Which is classic shutdown,
Yes,
overwhelm.
right? So she started with just putting her shoes on. That's it. Without saying, okay, then I have to go for a walk. Like, no, I'm just going to put my shoes on. So it's kind of these, just one thing at a time. Just this. I'm just going to do this.
Small step.
Yep.
That doesn't send you to the overwhelm.
Yep.
Piece.
And then if I feel like going for a walk once I have my shoes on, then I will. And if I don't, I won't.
Right.
Just being, you cannot force yourself one way or another. It's not going to work. Your system's going to push back.
Right.
So always just being very, very gentle. And I think the word is titration. Like little bits.
Steps.
Little bits.
And finding, it may have to be something really, really, really small.
It might need to be something very small.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Because the goal here is we need to start some movement and some mobilizing. And it doesn't have to be big mobilizing. It can just be the tiniest mobilizing.
And I would say too that sometimes if you are in overwhelm, just recognizing it and just saying, okay, I'm feeling overwhelmed, and maybe what you need is to just rest for a while. Like, okay, I know for me, I get kind of sensory overload frequently, and so what I need to do in that moment is be in a dark, quiet room. So that helps me to reset, and then I can, but before I recognize that in myself, I would just disregard it because I didn't understand it. I didn't understand why I was feeling overwhelmed and reacting that way. And so I would just keep pushing myself to just get on with it, just get on with the day. And, that didn't work.
Right? Right? Didn't just go away, did it?
It didn't. So now that I understand, like, okay, I'm in overwhelm and this is what I need. I need to dark and quiet for, half an hour.
Right.
And then
take some balls out of the jar.
Take some balls out of the jar, and then I can continue on with the next thing, whether it's like I'm feeling ready to go or it's okay, one small thing I'm going to do next.
Yeah.
So there's ways to work
right.
with it.
And it might also be reaching out to someone else to connect.
Yes.
Because again, that social engagement, that social connection piece is so helpful. That's one of the best ways for us to bring safety into the system. And when we're in those other states, usually it's because there's something that doesn't feel safe.
Yes.
So accessing what feels safe to you can help also with moving
Yes.
out of those states.
Yes. So if there's a person that you can connect with that feels safe, there's a space that you can be in that feels safe.
And maybe that's your dark, quiet room.
Yeah.
That,
yeah, exactly.
It's another safety.
Yes.
For that. Yeah.
So there's so much to talk about with this. We're going to wrap it up here in a minute. If there's any last questions, we've got about 1 minute. But we are going to, this will be available on my page, Innate Wholeness Healing, because that's where we broadcast it from. But we're also going to put it on our website, healingthroughthevagusnerve.com. It'll be in the blog. So if you missed some of it or want to rewatch it or want to share it, that's where to send people. Healingthroughthevagusnerve.com. And thanks for those of you that joined us today. And
it's been fun.
It's been fun. Yeah, we love talking about this. So,
all right. Bye.